The Columbia Journalism School report on Rolling Stone's allegations of a brutal gang rape at the University of Virginia fraternity ran more than 12,000 words. But the key words are these: a story of journalistic failure that was avoidable. Steve Cole, the school's dean and a former Washington Post managing editor, put it this way.
Flat out, whose fault was this?
Well, it was the collective fault of the reporter, the editor's supervisor, and the fact-checking department.
Two friends of the accuser, who were quoted by the woman named Jackie, told Megyn Kelly that what the magazine published about them in a piece that is now retracted was untrue.
You're described in the Rolling Stone article as concerned, allegedly, that her reputation would be shot for the next 4 years. A discussion Sabrina Erdely reported that you had while she stood there mute in her bloody dress. I mean, made you sound pretty callous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's just not true. And I think if Sabrina had reached out to us, to anybody, she would have found out that that's not true.
Joining us now for the Z Block is David Zerwick, television and media critic for the Baltimore Sun. And let's start with Rolling Stone's reaction to the report, particularly owner Jan Wenner, saying the magazine was just taken in by an expert fabulist.
Yeah, you know, that's the most distressing, well, one of the most distressing parts of this to me, is Wenner really blaming Jackie, saying she was a fabulist and she was an expert storyteller and she took him in.
All of which may be true.
Well, it is, but that's no excuse for your journalistic malfeasance. And if you read through the report, Howie, it's consistent. First they say that they were too nice. The reason that we made this mistake is we were too deferential to them. We're good people. That was the other thing. Then they say, well, the Ederle says, I wish that my editor had pushed me harder to contact these people. And the editor says, they start pointing fingers. And
you're talking here about the reporter, Sabrina Erdely.
Yes. And it's unbelievable to me, Howie, that they cannot accept this. And this is what the media, I mean, the public really dislikes about the media. This is as bad as it gets, and yet they can't accept any blame for it. They keep making excuses.
One of the stunning details in the Columbia report, Jackie never told Rolling Stone the real name of Drew, the supposed date who brought her to the supposed frat party. And then Jackie stopped cooperating until Sabrina Erdely said she wouldn't try to contact Drew. And the magazine published the story anyway.
It's unbelievable, Howie, that it didn't stop at the point where they couldn't talk to any of the people in here. It's astonishing that any editor would let them get to that point. You know, I did a piece for Rolling Stone a long time ago on Bill Moyers, a profile. And they not only wanted my quotes, they wanted my tapes. By the way, if anybody from Esquire is listening, 25 years ago, I'd like my tapes back from those interviews and maybe a book in them. But I'm serious. Nobody would let this kind of thing go on. And for Wenner to say nobody's going to be fired and this writer is going to write for us again is astonishing in its arrogance.
Right. Nobody is punished. And again, Rolling Stone and Sabrina Erdely didn't contact the three friends who it was pretty easy for the Washington Post to find them.
Exactly.
And they said it didn't happen that way. But here's the thing. The Columbia report, I thought, was masterful at detailing everything that went wrong with this train wreck, except the question of why. And I'm wondering whether you think that the magazine wanted this story to be true and that Sabrina Erdely, the reporter, who had interviewed other rape victims as a potential subject, but wanted perhaps a more spectacular tale, so it had to be not just one rape, but 7 men, and she had to be bloodied and all that. Did the magazine sort of suspend disbelief here?
You know, this is what the story is. And Columbia walked up to it and used the term confirmation bias and says that, quote, seems to be what happened here. It is crystal clear, and you don't have to use social science terms. It's what Walter Lippmann called a stereotype, an image, a picture in our head, and then the reporter went out to find evidence that would fit the picture in her head of white Southern male privilege going on down there. And this magazine, right up the editorial chain, wanted to believe it. You know, even the call to the university asking for the example that they did says what the intent was of this.
And a lot of people were damaged. You know, a decade ago, I revealed that Jason Blair was a serial fabricator at the New York Times. And a few months later, I wrote about Jack Kelly, who had made up stories around the world as a foreign correspondent for USA Today. Both of the editors of those newspapers lost their jobs. That's not the case here. But, you know, in a way, this was worse because the editors at those papers and Washington Post and Janet Cook, they were deceived. Their reporters lied to them. In this case, the reporter, I think, believed the story was true, and all the editors signed off on this piece of garbage. And that's why I wanted to spend some time with it today. Stick around, David.